Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts talk about their investment philosophy, how they evaluate early-stage startups, and how that may be unique from other venture investors. Here is the segment called Venture Investor Strategy. On today's special segment, we have Sheel Manat of 500 Startups. Sheel, can you talk about your thesis and also how you evaluate startups for investment, and if there are any unique aspects of your approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So my broad fund thesis is financial services for the rest of us. So a couple things. In the U.S., the financial services have really not done a great job at serving millennials and sort of anyone who's not an old white man. I'll just say that. And so all these startups are encroaching on the traditional banking segments. In every piece of traditional banking, whether it's loans, insurance, investment, wealth management, small business, all that stuff is being encroached upon by fintech startups. So that's sort of financial service for the rest of us here. And then in developing markets, fintech startups are leaping traditional banking altogether. So, stuff I mentioned is the way how difficult it was to serve an individual when I was doing microfinance work 10 years ago, and how easy that is now with a smartphone. And I think that brings a bunch of new people into the traditional banking world that you could never serve before. So I think that's a huge piece of my thesis. And then how I evaluate startups, we make decisions very quickly. Sort of for the first dozen or so investments that I've done, I was the sole decision maker. I was the only one who met with the company, and then in a couple of meetings, I sort of decide whether to invest or not. Now we're instituting a little bit more of a process where I've got a team behind me, and for the majority of our investments, we do through the accelerator. So we have an application process, and then we do a series of interviews before we get comfortable and make an investment. But nothing sort of that unique, other than, there's an application process, and we invest a couple times a year for batches starting in January and July. And then, of course, we do investments outside of the accelerator. So those I just look at as they come in, typically referrals from other investors or founders.
On today's special segment, we have William Mugayar. William, can you talk about your thesis and also how you evaluate startups for investment, and if there are any unique aspects of your approach?
Sure. So my new thesis now, because I'm a new fund, is really centered on decentralization. So it's about openly decentralized networked applications or technologies that can reimagine either industries or sectors via new intermediaries or protocols. So it's a mouthful, but it's a lot in there. There's collaborative. There's peer-to-peer in the cloud. There's network. There's mesh of networks. There's a replacement of old systems. There is unbundling and rebundling. There is re-engineering. And there are new stacks in there, the blockchain being one of them. So the blockchain is one type of these types of applications. And the number one question I always ask is, what's your vision? What do you see happening in 2 or 3 years from now, both in the marketplace? What are your assumptions? And where do you think you like to be in that new world? So I like to hear them imagine this new world that we don't see today, and I try to take a long view as to where the startup could be going, and to figure out whether it's a small idea or a big idea, and usually the vision and then talking with them can help you arrive at your own conclusions, and it's also based on your own research. I'm very much research oriented, so the thing is that when you have some strong beliefs and you believe that the world is going to go in a particular direction, and then when you see startup that happens to go in the same direction or close to it, then you can say, oh, there's a match. I've been thinking about this in particular, and then I like your thinking. It's very similar. And so let's keep talking. So there's this intersecting point, and you see these common elements, and that's very exciting to me.
Is there a way that you seek out startups with these approaches?
Well, I mean, luckily right now, because I'm writing a lot on my blog and I'm kind of doing it on a regular basis, I think I'm lucky that I'm receiving a lot of inbound inquiries. I'm meeting people that I would not have been able to meet before, because you can't be everywhere, obviously. I like to work on the ground. I like to go attend events and be in different cities and kind of mix on the ground up. But I wouldn't underestimate the power of blogging and the power of reaching with your thoughts via online, because entrepreneurs exist all over the place, and they read your material and they send you an email and they say, wow, I'm working on this thing that you've been talking about. Can we talk? And this has been a great way for me to connect with entrepreneurs and startups that I would have never been able to connect with before.
On today's special segment, we have Tom Tunguz. Tom, can you talk about your thesis and also how you evaluate early-stage startups for investment, and maybe mention aspects of your approach that may be unique from other venture investors?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone invests differently, but I'm a really thesis-driven investor. So what that means is I really like to understand the space, and I'll spend a whole lot of time. So the last investment that I made, is a company called Dremio, and it's a data movement company. And it really was because I was obviously working with the Looker guys, and they were running into one particular problem. And so I spent a lot of time talking to the team at Looker. And then they said, we really think there's a company that can be built here. And so I spent about a year looking into the space. And I interviewed all kinds of people. I met people who'd left all the incumbent companies like Informatica and Golden Gate Software, and created a big landscape. And then I'll never forget, this was about like a couple of months ago, the Dremio guys walk in the door and they start their pitch. And within the first 5 minutes, I turned to my partner, Satish, and I said, we have to invest in this company, right? And the whole goal of that methodology is you have a prepared mind. And so when that company walks in, you're ready to commit. The 10 or 15 people that you can call on diligence, and you just have a point of view, right? So those are the pros of the methodology. The downside is you're focused on one particular area, which means that you may miss great opportunities elsewhere. But that's a methodology I really like. And then the other methodology that we have internally is we're really team-driven. So we work in 2s and 3s on deal teams, and then we work in 2s and 3s after we invest in portfolio companies. So if we have one company that needs help in developer-focused go-to-markets, then my partner Scott, who invested in Twilio and Stripe and Heroku, who's an expert there, he'll come and help the company, right? And so there's a nice kind of exchange or interchange of ideas that spans not just the relationship between the partner and the investment, but the whole firm. So I really like that part about Redpoint.
Sounds like there might be some filters and criteria that you guys are using. Do you believe in sort of a formalized process around filtering and criteria, or is it more of having this prepared mind and then pattern recognition allows you to make quick decisions?
So I think it's a combination of the two. So I'll confess, I have a template that I take in with me to most startup pitches. And, it lists kind of 15 or 20 different questions. And what I love about that is it kind of structures the conversation. And there's been a lot of research into structured interviews that shows that structured interviews are much more effective than unstructured interviews. So I like that. But once you're through the data collection and you're kind of through, hey, what do the unit economics work? And you kind of get to the emotional part of the decision-making process, right? And there's this story of this German guy who was struck by lightning just totally randomly. And the part of his brain that creates emotions was destroyed. And there were all these researchers who started to study him.
Wow.
It's fascinating, right? And started to study him, and they thought that, here we go, we've got basically a human computer, right? Someone who is going to make decisions purely rationally. And what they found, to their great surprise, was this man, unfortunately for him, was totally unable to make decisions. And it's because he never had perfect information, right? So should I have the cheeseburger or should I have the salad, and he was just totally paralyzed. And so what they discovered through this man was the way that we commit to our decisions is by using emotions. And so that made me realize that it's no different in venture. You really need to have an emotional attachment to the business, whether it's a combination of I'm really excited about this market, or I'm really excited about this technology, and I'm really excited about this team.
I agree. We've got a filtering set, and we've tried to make it as objective and binary as possible, just yeses and nos. But I've found that the businesses I'm getting really emotionally attached to, my objective answer might be yes, whereas my partner's objective answer might be no.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes the emotional decisions are the best ones. I mean, there are a lot of cases at Redpoint where we've invested in companies where one partner was incredibly passionate. Netflix is probably the canonical example for us, right? Where there was one partner my partner Tim, who's unbelievably passionate about this company. And he faced a lot of internal resistance, but he turned out to be absolutely right.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.